Good evening. I'm Socrates, Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening and welcome to Doc and Sock. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi in the We Believe Digital Broadcasting Studios. You know, we are a complete network that consists of the internet radio at WBLV. That's We Believe Radio, playing some of the best music that you ever want to hear 24 hours a day. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and family. We want you to send us stars and join our fan base. Subscribe to us there on Facebook. We appreciate it. If you're watching us on YouTube, then go ahead on and subscribe to our program. Our numbers are growing every day. We look forward to being the #1 network in the country. You know, somebody had to start somewhere all of the time. We may be the new kid on the block, but we have high inspirations. We want to be like Michael Jordan, who wasn't even drafted coming into the NBA. No one picked him up from the airport, and he became one of the all-time greatest basketball players ever. There's a lot of controversy about that, but me being the senior that I am, I'm always partial to Dr. J, who came before Michael and did some amazing things, brought in a whole league all about himself. So, you know, we're going to have fun here in the studio tonight. We're going to talk a lot about black folk and black folks' achievements and the lack thereof. So we want you to stay tuned and enjoy this program this evening. Now, if you're watching us on our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, then want you to subscribe and want you to take advantage of all of the programs that are there for you. You know, we are not a page. We are a complete network. We're just like Showtime and Hulu. We just don't have the advertising dollars yet to get out there and brand this network. But from the quality of our programming, the content, and the quality of our videos, we take second seat to no one. We believe that we should become a premier network in the next few years. So I want you to enjoy the program tonight. As always, my guest, who needs no introduction, I mean, he's my co-host. He needs no introduction, Dr. Eldridge Henderson. I always like to say that he's a dangerous man. Dangerous, why? He's not violent. But why is he dangerous? He's dangerous because he was born on a plantation and has risen to be Dr. Eldridge Henderson, one of the most sought-after speakers in this country. That dash between the plantation and where he is today is miles apart. You know, Booker T. Washington said that it's not the heights that you obtain, but it's the depths from which you came. That's the distance that you have to measure. And when I look at a lot of our African Americans out here, the humble beginning that they had, and even though to others it doesn't look like they have done much, to become a school teacher or a school superintendent, having come from being born on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta or some other poor part of the state, making that jump from that position to a school superintendent is greater than the beginning that Albert Einstein had. We have to acknowledge this. When you start that far behind, it is more difficult to catch up and to achieve. So some of our people, when we look at them, we think they're not doing much. But to many of us, I see them and they are overachieving. They may be only a manager at McDonald's, but I know where they came from. Therefore, they are overachieving. I look at a lot of our children that are underachieving because they had a head start and they squandered it and not doing much with it. But let me get back to my co-host. Doc, it's always good to have you in the studio. How have you been?
Well, thank you. I've been fine, Mr. Socrates, and I see you seem to be lively today. You walked in listening to your radio station, and I thought something was going on that had you pleased. You seemed to be smiling, and then you told me what was going on. So that radio station is strong, and I heard the announcer, and I thought that was someone from Washington, D.C. or New York City, and that's a local man, Mr. Taylor. I think you're doing a great job there, sir.
Now we're training our people and giving our people opportunities where they might not have it before. Now, you know, Mr. Taylor's father was Herman Taylor II. And he probably had one of the best voices in the entire state of Mississippi. Did you know him?
I knew him well. We went to school together. Matter of fact, he had the best voice in America for DJs working.
Okay.
So he was very sharp, crisp, and clear. And he was a little short man. But if you didn't know him and didn't see him, you would think he was about 7'2".
He had a small frame, but that voice came out of that frame.
He was a great man, a religious man, and raised some good children.
Wonderful. Now, what have you been doing?
Well, I've been just waiting and talking about things. I'm in the process of making a little change in my seminars and workshops right now. We are going to go Zooming all over the world with our seminars and workshops and have people in the audience at the same time starting next month. We are specialized in the same thing: education and training, economic, politics, religion, and leadership. And we will do this for the next 6 years. We have a 6-year program where we will be addressing over 200 different topics in those 5 areas. And our theme is that if people want to control where they're in the majority, they have to do just like you're doing. Train your own leaders, recruit them first, get them in a position of responsibility, and then place them where they're going to do the best work. And that's exactly what you're doing here. You got an intern from Jackson State University, you had Mr. Taylor, you have a young producer back there, and all of them are sharp. And when I met all of them, I wondered where they got the training.
Wow.
They are very competitive. You have a good team here.
Thank you, Doc. Well, I certainly have a good team here because you helped sponsor this team and you were a critical part of this opportunity that we are affording them. And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, we want to jump right into international news, and we kind of come down through here tonight. And this is Martin Luther King's birthday celebration month. And then we move into Black History Month. So we're going to be kind of focusing on black stuff a lot. And we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, but first we want to start out on an international basis. I'm somewhat troubled about what I don't understand and what I cannot see. I'm troubled by the violence that I see going on in the country, in the world, and in particular in Africa and the Middle East, in that region. I'm puzzled by it because I don't understand. On one day when I look at the TV, they are bombing Palestine and people are being killed by the thousands. And I don't know exactly for what. And then the next day when I turn on the TV, people over in Yemen are now being bombed, and I don't know exactly for what. And so we want to talk about that because internationally, my friend, my co-host says that we are on the brink of World War III Part 1. I say he say on the brink. He may say that it has already begun. Dr. Henderson, why are we having these conflicts and the way they're spreading out? How do you predict the future?
Well, the future is going to be similar to what we have had during the previous wars. You are going to have a lot of killing, and they're going to get tired of war and then going to settle. They're not going to win anything, and they will divide up what they are fighting for. And the people currently are fighting for two reasons. One is to gain territory, and the other one is to gain natural resources. And the same powers that are fighting going to divide up the land that they take and keep the people in bondage. That has been the history of World War I, World War II, and it's going to be the same thing with World War III Part 1. And we better not get to Part 2 of World War III. It's going to be an international war. It's going to be people fighting and dying on all continents. Because some of the terrorists, alleged terrorists, are saying now, we are going to hit the nations that are bombing us and fighting us where they reside in just a matter of time. So you can expect things happening in the major cities in Europe, America, in Africa, the Middle East, and I would say Latin America.
Now, Doc, you say wars are fought for two reasons: the gain of territory and natural resources. Now, why is territory so important that you have to kill for it?
Well, when I was reading The Art of War by that great Chinese leader, all people that love war or know something about war know that you have to have a strategic location. You have to be close to the sea, and of course you have to have your environment where there's a lot of natural resources so you can supply yourself with the materials and resources you need. And you have to cut down on the population because there are usually too many people in all nations that are not producing enough because they don't have skills to do it. And all people know that have studied war, sometimes you have to, I call it, denude the population in order to start over again and make new economic gains with fewer people. Now, people don't like to talk about that, but if you read the history, you will find that in every major war, they kill from 1 to 15 or 30 million people, and the same people that were fighting make up at a conference, and they keep their nation and their identity, even though they might lose a little of their territory.
So millions and millions of people are killed in these conflicts. I'll remind our viewers that over 700,000 gave their lives in the little conflict in the Civil War right here in the USA. And I don't think that war was about territory as much as it was about resources and the things that you say that the other part of what they fight for. But now let's get back over here in Yemen. Now, Yemen knew that they could not defend themselves if they attacked those ships in the Red Sea, but yet they felt compelled to fire on those ships. What makes one act like that?
Well, because they don't like bullies, and they're not a coward. When you're a small defenseless group, you can call them anything you want, liberators or terrorists. When you find that people constantly and historically bully you and what you stand for, one day you're going to fight them. And every major group in the world have done that, except black people in America. We always beg to fight in other people's wars, especially the United States wars, but we won't even fight for ourselves. We beg the same people that don't even want us to fight in the last 4 wars. We have begged them to let us join, and you were fighting as a slave yourself. I'm a good example. I've told you many times. When I was in the Vietnamese War in the 1960s, I came from Hinds County and couldn't even vote in Hinds County when I left here in 1966, I believe. Think about it.
Now, Doc, I want you to move your mic over a little bit on this side so that we can get a better voice from you to our viewers out there. Now, Doc, you mentioned that black people don't want to fight for themselves, but they love to join in fighting with others. Could that be because we have come to the point that the old adage, if you can't beat them, join them?
Well, no, it's not that. It's all about training. Black people have always been trained that way since they've been in America. They have been trained to be subservient. They have been trained to be obedient. And they always have been trained that there are certain titles that you have to honor. The boss, the supervisor, the Lord, the ruler, the white man, the white woman, anybody other than themselves. And if you start talking about honoring yourself, you then are going to be considered an outcast or a terrorist. And sooner or later, those three enemies of mankind, the police, the court system, and the major industrial leaders, are going to figure out some way to contain you and probably either get you killed or put you in prison for 30 or 40 years. That's the history of black people in America. So most of them just have said, I'm just going to get along as best way I can, try to do what I can to feed my family, and love the Lord and die and go to heaven.
Get a good education, work hard, and be good-mannered, and you can make it.
They get a good miseducation, because the people that get in the real education, and many times, are not going to teach the black man what they need to do to be competitive. That's why they have segregated education in the South, and matter of fact, basically throughout the world, for the people they don't want to be on an equal playing field. Now that is a historical fact.
Now, Doc, I gotta get back to this war, and then I want to come back into what you just said, because it's important. I was told by a homeless person that I was not an educated man, but I was well trained. And I found that to be insulting. And because I'm a college graduate, I worked on my master's degree, etc., and I felt like I was an educated man. But this homeless guy said, no, you've been trained to follow instructions and to do what you are told, and you do that well. You carry out the orders. You don't make the orders. And you don't understand the logic and the thought process of those that do. He said, you decide what you're going to eat today, but someone is deciding whether you're going to eat today.
Now, he's exactly right. The thing is, and I don't like to say this publicly, but black people, since they've been in America, have been trained to be order takers and not policy makers. You don't find a black person anywhere in America that's making what I call significant policies in government, education, economic development, leadership, social or whatever, that's impact the whole nation. Not one. Everyone that has a so-called position always reporting to a commission, a group, or a board of control to say yeah or nay about whatever decision he has.
Well, Doc, I take that thing real serious, and that's why I always like to tell, my people that I sign the front of the check. I don't sign the back of it. I am the guy that is creating the jobs, and you have to go out here and create jobs, because no one is finding you trying to see if you want one. You have to go out and create that. But I want to get back to the black man. Now, we have a black Secretary of Defense. Now, I understand that he's orchestrating all of these airstrikes that's going on in the Palestine and in Yemen from his hospital bed.
That's all it takes.
And you say that black men don't make any decisions. How you reconcile that?
Well, it's just what I said. He is what I call a strategic thinker. He's a West Point graduate. He is a career military man that's retired. And he has been trained to take orders. So he has been told, I'm going to give you a position, and you tell us who you want us to kill and how to do it, and I will approve it or disapprove it. That's his job. He is an order taker, not a policy maker. Joe Biden and the leaders in the military elite going to make those decisions.
Wow. So there's a lot of controversy about whether or not he should have advised the White House that he was sick and in the hospital.
Oh, they knew about it. You know, they're going to pretend. That's sort of just discredit the man. You know, certain people knew about that. But when you hear things or see things that these reporters put out, you can't believe everything you see or read or hear. Now, you know the man is not going to go to the hospital and not tell someone. I understand even his aide knew he was in the hospital, and she was elsewhere, and she took over some of the responsibilities. But don't believe everything you read.
All right, that's fake news.
That's right.
Okay, let's wrap this war thing up for tonight. Now, I know that America, Europe, have to have a villain to justify the strikes. Doc, it seems to me that everybody wants to draw Iran into this conflict. And there is another player out here that I don't hear them being mentioned at all, called Russia. And we know that they are bombing the hell out of Ukraine. But some say they may be involved in supporting Yemen.
Of course they are. If you look at the history of Russia, and you didn't even mention the other group that's causing more chaos than anybody else in the world, and that's the Chinese, all of them are involved in this war. The Russians, the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese, and even North Korea. They're all giving their weapons and money and support and advice to the groups that they support. They're doing this without being part of the war, as I call, by sending their people in to fight on the ground. Now you need missiles and artificial intelligence to fight a good war that you don't want to win. I told you, they don't fight to win a war. Not that hadn't happened, but one time here recently, and that's when they fought the war against England and America, and they got their so-called independence. But at the same time, before people even were told, they reformed their alliance with England, and now they've been cozy ever since the war because they were fighting their cousins, their other relatives, just like they were during the so-called Civil War. They were doing the same thing, fighting their brothers and sisters and uncles.
So you're saying that all major countries are involved in this conflict, even though we may not hear their name on the local news. You're saying that North Korea, China, you're saying that Russia, everybody has a hand in stirring this pot.
That's right. See, we have done the research. We know what groups are aligned with Russia, the United States, the Chinese, North Korea, and some of the other major countries in the Middle East. We don't have those insurgents, in most cases, making airplanes, major bombs, and things of that nature. And according to some of the research we have done, we find that when they get these bombs, you know, they explode, and there are cases and things and other seals that are there. You find that they are made all over the world, and especially in the United States, in Russia, China, North Korea, and the European nations. So they are sold to these rogue groups. They are also sold to what we call these private military groups. And when they win or lose a scrimmage, a lot of times they leave their weapons, and the people that win that little battle at that time end up with their major weapons, their helicopters, some of their tanks and their jeeps and things of that nature. That is what we call one of the flaws of war. All the big nations do that. When you have a major war going on, I'm not talking about the battle, the major war, and you lose, you always have a retreat as your second maneuver. If you go fight a battle, a war, and you don't win, you have it on paper. How long you're going to stay there, and if certain things don't happen by a certain time, you're going to retreat, redo your attack plan, and do it at another time.
Now, Doc, I was told that even in the war with Native Americans, that somebody had to sell the Indians the rifles and ammunition.
Of course.
Now, I wonder who did that.
Well, the Europeans. For instance, if the Indians were being attacked by the English, many times they got their weapons from the French. And when the French decided they were going to go against the progress of the Indians and give them some peace, they got their weapon from another foreign country. And many times you will find that the Indians won a lot of battles and they took the weapons in many instances. But you're not going to find that in the textbooks. That's what you have to find by doing the research in old periodicals and old newspapers during that period. And all of that information is on the internet. You got to know how to search, research, and find it. And you'll see what was actually going on in that period. And the Indians didn't lose every battle with the soldiers during that period.
Wow. So our prayers are with those that are involved in these conflicts all over the world. Too many lives are being lost. Too many people are being displaced. The word genocide is being used more than ever before. Even from South Africa, they have proclaimed that this is, in fact, genocide.
Well, what is genocide? I will give you the definition in a brief manner. Genocide is when you declare that you're going to exterminate, kill, or destroy certain people from a certain place at a certain time. And you do it in a very aggressive manner, and the best way to do it is, number one, you destroy their homes. The next thing you do, you make sure they have limited food, clothing, because they don't have any shelter, and not very much heat if it's in the wintertime. And you make sure you're going to have them moving to another location, not on buses like they are being so kind to those immigrants down in Texas and Mexico that's coming in America. They have to walk where they are going. So as they move, and you can see the Indian parallel here in America, then you can bomb them. You tell them where they can go. You put your spy machines, your artificial intelligence in those areas. Say, this is going to be your area. We're going to give you enough space for 150,000 in this camp. And they help them build that, wired up with intelligence devices, halfway feed them, won't give them proper medicine, and that keep them confused and make them mad. And many times they even attack them once they get settled, and they then move to another settlement, another so-called refugee camp. They did that when we were in Vietnam. The Vietnamese, the South Vietnamese, would go to one village. 2 or 3 weeks or months later, you see thousands of them coming down the road with bags, going to the next little village. They were homeless and hungry, children on the mothers' backs. Some were in those 5-gallon cans that they would put on their shoulders. A child in the front can, a child in the back can. Food on top of their head. Old women, old men. Some of them were on sticks and mats, dragging them down the road. As they would be coming down, many times they would be bombed. And they were not bombed by the North Koreans because they didn't have no kind of capacity considered, that were considered as much as America had at the time, bombs and so forth, planes, jets, and so forth.
Now, Doc, you're describing something that I have not seen. People with their children in a 5-gallon pail.
That's right. You see them coming down the road. As you see them Africans that can walk with all that water on top of their head,
yeah,
and not drop out. And those Vietnamese and those Asian folks a lot of times put that long pole on their shoulder with 2 5-gallon cans on each end and a baby on the back. And sometime they will have a bundle on the other shoulder, and all of them will be going down the road like the Palestinians are doing with the whole family, halfway scared, hungry, sick, and get no respect on the way.
Wow.
I've seen it, actually seen it. I didn't read about this. I've seen it.
Well, Doc, I was also in that war in 1969 and 1971, and so I was blessed not to have been sent to Vietnam and had the privilege of working in Fort Lewis, Washington for 2 years as finance NCO. And I was spared the horrific things that you saw and went through. Because I saw the soldiers coming back to Madigan Hospital there in Tacoma, Washington, and at Fort Lewis, and it was nothing pretty, Doc.
No, you didn't. You saw the good part. I saw the real part. I saw the soldiers that were wounded and put in the local hospital in Vietnam before they did the reassessment and sent them to various military hospitals throughout the world and to the United States. And you should have seen those men, 18, 19, 20, 30, 40, a lot of lifers, 50, 55, early 60s, arms off, eyes shut out, legs hanging. Many of them were still able to talk. And I'm not going to say what they were saying.
Now, I can imagine what they were saying, Doc.
So it's tough, man. War is a clearing or clearing agent for people that want to dominate the world.
Doc, we're up against a break here. We're going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the similarities, what we've been discussing in third world countries and the Middle Eastern area, to what's going on right here in Mississippi. Mississippi is our primary responsibility, even though we realize that the world needs new leaders, and a lot of them will have to come from Mississippi. But Mississippi is suffering now, and we're going to talk about some of that when we come back. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Welcome back to We Believe Digital Broadcasting Network. You're watching Doc and Sock. We broadcast each Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. in the evenings. Now, last night I was unable to be on the show, and my more than capable and able co-producer Curtis Williams sat in with Doc, and they had a great show. You need to go back and check Organize, Don't Criticize Part 1 and Part 2, and you'll learn a lot. And so I enjoyed watching that when I got back from the premiere of the play Rise and Hope over at the theater in Vondren. And Rise and Hope is what we need here in Mississippi. Now, Doc, Mississippi is in a war, even though there are no shots being fired. I think that there are more than one way to have victory other than with the gun.
Of course. And that's the best so-called non-war that you can have. You look good when you don't actually just kill them on the spot. You have to use the strategy where you're going to gradually kill them and kill the mind at the same time, keep them stunted, and have them in a state of what I'll call misuse, where they don't even love themselves. They won't have the desire to get the education and training that they possibly could get if they were in the right mind, because they're not going to be healthy. They're going to have family problems, personal problems, and you're just not going to have anything but chaos. And that's going to be basically your next generation. The same thing is happening in the Middle East, and the similarity is so clear here in Mississippi with this summer food program until it's in the same book, the same pattern by the same people.
Well, let's talk about that. Here in Mississippi, the war is raging. One of the strategies that seems to be in effect is to not expand Medicaid to the most unhealthiest state in the nation. How can you deprive the most unhealthiest people from having health care coverage?
All you have to do is do what they do all over the world. You pass a mandate, your top leaders pass a mandate and say it's not going to happen on my watch. Say, I don't want you to be healthy.
Wow.
I don't want you to have adequate food and shelter, because I make the agenda and I have something else planned for you, and you'll see what that's going to be in 3, 5, or 7 years.
So you decide that you're not going to provide health care to a greater part of your population, which happens to be African American. 40+% of Mississippi is black, and so Medicaid is denied to all poor people in Mississippi, whether they're black or white, and it is a shame. Now, the other thing, Doc, the state of Mississippi decided that it would decline paying unemployment benefits to its people during the COVID strike. Why would you not allow them to have unemployment benefits?
No, you want the people to work. You have to understand, Mr. Socrates, if you had a big-time position as a political appointee or one that is elected, and you have people that's funding your campaigns, setting up big parties for you that they pay for, $200,000 or $300,000 parties, and you want to do something to help them. So therefore, you are going to create programs to help those folks and hurt those that can't help you. That's why you eliminate taxes, and that's why you make sure that if the money doesn't come to you so you can distribute it, you're not going to allow it to happen. Now, this summer money that we talk about, billions of dollars, we're looking at it today. I think there are about 38 states and Indian reservations that say, oh yeah, we want this program. And if you look at the list of the states that didn't accept it, most of them are southern states. You have a few up there in the northeast, but most of them are southern states, and what they don't like, that money goes directly to the recipients on a card and the grocery stores. And they're going to give each parent so many dollars per each child. All that's not coming through the governor's office. The legislatures can't control it. It goes directly to the parent with the child. Now, and they don't want that because that'll give them a degree of independence. But at the same time, they are taking millions and millions of dollars from the grocery stores. So the big state grocery stores ought to be fighting the legislature and say, man, you're keeping us from $5 or $10 million. Do something about it. Let us have this money.
Well, the same argument would apply to Medicaid and all of the other programs. Now, let's move on with that, because your state, would you say that you love Mississippi, that you never going to leave here?
That's a fact.
And so you then have to speak up for it. But I need to understand what logic is in place when we reject summer feeding programs to all of the children in the state of Mississippi.
Domination, ruling, intimidation, bullying. They're doing the same thing in the Middle East with the poor people. The same plan is in effect. You don't feed them. You don't give them medical care. You blow up the hospital. You go in and just blow it up, send them on to another place. And I told you in our introduction, then you take advantage of them there at the second place or the third place. You keep them on the move. So they're going to be in a situation where they are going to start rebelling, not this group, because they're going to be too poor and too sick, but their children and their grandchildren. And the other part that a lot of people don't mess with, they don't like to talk about it, every nation that's doing these things that we are addressing this evening, all of them have same people that they consider citizens within their main population, and they leave those folks alone, but those other citizens in Palestine and in America and others see that their cousins, friends, mothers, and fathers are the victims. In a short period of time, by the end of the year, these same nations going to have the people that they consider normal Palestinians, normal Iranians of ethnic heritage, fighting them while they are somewhere fighting the other people, just as America did during World War II when they put the Japanese, the German, and some Italians in relocation camps in America, but had the Japanese young boys volunteering to join the military while their mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers were in relocation camps in Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and other places. And most of these were citizens. And those Japanese were some of the best fighters for America while their parents, brothers and sisters, were in relocation camps. I showed you the list 2 weeks ago.
Now, Doc, after Reconstruction, after the Civil War, and then after Reconstruction, that was the Mississippi strategy. And the Mississippi strategy is what was used throughout this whole nation to put black people back in slavery. So Mississippi has led the way for everything that appears to be designed to keep a certain group of people in poverty and unhealthy and uneducated.
Well, it didn't start in Mississippi, sir. It started in Europe. Now, this was going on in Europe before they even had a state called Mississippi, because the Europeans were in Africa, they were in Asia, they were in China, in all of these places, building their militaries, taking over territory, and they would help get those natives in Africa and other parts of the world and send them to America and to the Caribbean and other areas. They started there first. And then when they found that Mississippi and the South were areas where there was great possibility for agricultural production, they had tobacco and rice paddies, fields all over certain parts like Virginia and other places. They had mines in various parts of America, still do, but they're not as plentiful as they used to be. And they had to have black folks or some folks to work in those mines. They knew the white folks weren't going to do it. They had the Native Americans there for a while. They worked themselves to death or died from disease or would run away and give their friends in another territory somewhere. And the only person that couldn't run and hide were the black folks. So they forgot about the others and said, you Indians going to leave. We got these black folks now, even though we lost the war. Our buddies are in the National Congress, And we have our senators in the majority because we are using your vote, your population, to have more representation, and we're going to have a deal in just a few months.
Wow.
And we're going to have you Negroes back in slavery in its entirety throughout the South. But now let me finish this and tell you, that was for about 97% of blacks. About 3% of blacks in America have always been free. Always been free.
What are you talking about, Doc?
Yeah, we'll do that. Talk about that later.
What are you talking about? 3% have been free. How did they get free?
Many of them never were slaves. There have been a lot of black people that's never been slaves in America. They were never slaves. Some came directly from Africa. Some were bred here in America. And if you look at the history books, but not the public school history books, you'll find that they always had a lot of blacks that were free in almost every major city, and that gave the escaping blacks a safe house to go to many times when they were trying to get out of the South, when they were trying to get up in the North, or when they were trying to get to Canada. But you read the textbooks and you'll be led to believe that most of the safe houses were homes that white folks owned, and they love the black soul. They'll sneak them in there and give them some food and a day of rest, and send them on to the next place so they can get to Canada or to some so-called state where they didn't have slavery.
Well, this Mississippi strategy that was put in place and adopted all throughout the South said that, we can institute poll taxes, that you will have to pass a test before you can vote. And then you became a sharecropper. Then you began to, because once they took all of their homes and businesses that they were building after Reconstruction, because, Mississippi had 2 senators.
That's right.
And probably there wasn't but 4 senators in the whole country.
And so you mean black senators?
Black senators.
That's right. That's what I want people to know, that we're not talking about just white senators. They had black senators. They had a lot of blacks in the legislature. They had some black sheriffs. They had a black guy that was always a part of education in the state. All kind of clerks. All that happened during the period of 1868 to 1877. And after 1877, they gave the blacks a mandate. You're going to abandon your office, or we're going to take it and kill you.
Wow. Now,
Just
Doc,
that clear.
that's very clear. Now, Doc, there were only 4 senators in the whole USA, and 2 of them were from Mississippi. And so my ancestors, and on the European side, we all got a lot of different bloodlines that's running through you. I guess they call us mutts, because you got so much different bloodlines running through you because you were born here in America. And you are mulatto, and that's when you get like that, that means you got a lot of stuff in you.
Yeah, well, I call you all hybrids. I call you man-made people. Man-made. You're a hybrid.
Now,
you are a crossbreed. You're like a rose that you slash the side and stick another rose in it of a different species, and it will change the color of the rose.
Does it change the smell? Does it change the
yeah.
rose is still a rose?
It's still a rose, but they all don't smell the same, and they don't look the same, but they're all good.
Now, Doc, so these hybrids, as you call it, that are created, and they are permeating society today, and probably more of them are in their leadership class in America now than dark-skinned African Americans.
Right. Now, I don't like to say it, Mr. Socrates, but you are an example.
Yeah.
If somebody would see you, they would say you are from the Caribbean area, that you are from Washington, D.C., you were born a free Negro, all your parents were free all their lives, and that you must have had a special privilege because you don't look like you from the slave stock. And since I know your history, you are one of those hybrids that were created by the Europeans, blacks, and the so-called Native Americans. You are a special breed, folks like you, and you all get a little preference to move farther than the average black, but you only have a ceiling that you can reach. That's why a lot of people like you have been told, directly and indirectly, by black and white, you have done well enough. I can help you, but I'm not going to do it. You're not going to get any more contracts unless you take me to court. And if I give you $1.50 and you can't find but $1.49, can't find another penny, I'm going to file a suit against you and see if I can take your license.
Doc, it's a vicious cycle out here. Let's move on, Doc. Now, we're going to talk about Black History Month, and we're going to talk about Martin Luther King, and this month belongs to Martin Luther King. I want to salute the man, but I want to go back for a minute and just talk about a few of these great men. Now, I don't know if these men are hybrids or if they are originals or what. I don't. You can help me with that.
Name
well, I'm going to start with a lot of them. I'm going to start with Martin Luther King. I'm going to come back to Malcolm X. I'm going to come back to Stokely Carmichael. I'm going to come back to Ralph Brown. I'm going to come back to Medgar Evers and Charles Tisdale and Percy Green. I'm going to come back to Angela Davis and so on and so on. Because these were the people of my generation that I saw was on the front line, giving their lives so that I would have a better opportunity. Now, I don't know whether they hybrids or not.
Well, they were a mixture. Some you named, and I'm not going to say which ones were. Some were hybrids, and some were descendants of African slaves, and some were descendants of free blacks that were never in slavery. Well, a lot of those blacks you mentioned had a great education. Their parents had businesses. Many of them did. They went to Harvard and Yale, Princeton, the University of Michigan, and other places, and they had opportunities that a lot of the others didn't have.
They must be hybrids.
Many of them were.
Because Marcus Garvey was not a hybrid.
No, he wasn't. He was a dead 100% black man. And if you look at his picture, he closed his eyes and his mouth, and you couldn't see him at night. But he was one of the smartest people around. He was so powerful until the federal government got scared of him. He could organize without social media. He had chapters all over America. The UNIA. He had a ship company. He had the ability to go into a community or send his representative, like Jennings. Let me see what's Jennings' first name? He is a minister. Geno Jennings. He can go into a place, and in 30 days, he would have a group or a chapter get ready to fight and go back to Africa and be independent, self-respecting black men. And they were proud folks.
I was proud of Marcus. I read the story. I saw the plan, the relocation plan, and the fight for freedom and equality. I got all that. Now, Doc, as a boy, I would gather around. There wasn't but one or two radios, and one TV finally came in the country where I live. And it would be so dark out there until you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Wasn't no lights in the country, period, Doc.
That's right.
I mean, we're talking about dark. And as a boy, I would have to walk by this graveyard in this cemetery, and it was between me and where I was wanting to go. And I had to go over there to see the young lady, but I couldn't be afraid of that graveyard to do that. So every night I would run. I would walk until I got halfway of the cemetery. Then I'd take off running.
See, that's because you had been brainwashed and you had been taught that old Santa Claus theory. I've never seen anything bad happen in a graveyard. You cannot worry about the dead. Those are some of the safest places to be. If you want to get into something, you go to a graveyard, man. But now if you've been brainwashed by your parents and others and your tradition, you think a graveyard is a place to avoid. That's the safest place in any area.
Well, you haven't heard the term haint?
Of course. I was brought up that way too. until I got about 14 or 15. I didn't believe all that stuff. Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and haints and stuff. But up until that period, I was scared to death.
Well, what was a haint?
Well, there was something that you couldn't see, but you can hear. And sometimes if you could see in your mind, you couldn't make out whether it was a person or a flash or a wave or what. Just a lot of propaganda that people were taught to scare kids, to make them fearful so they can keep them in line. And they got another institution that's been doing the same thing, and it's called religion.
Wow. Well, ghosts, haints,
That's
religion.
right. All the same.
Well, I don't know if it's all the same or not, Doc. I think that religion has served a greater purpose than just to frighten you, to keep you in line.
Has, and the same with haints. They kept you from doing a lot of things.
They did.
You were scared of them.
That's right.
The ghost, you were scared of the ghost. Then when you got a little older and you were brought up in the church like me, you were afraid to go to hell when you died. Up until I was about 30, I was afraid to get sick because I thought I would die and go to hell until I learned better.
Doc, I saw a lot of black people that got buried that wasn't dead.
That's a fact. That's
Because,
a fact.
you know, back then, if you went, we didn't have no such thing that he was in a coma. You had about 3 hours to wake up.
We didn't even know what that word, didn't have a definition for that. And I used to work at a funeral home. And when you go to a place, you just slap them on the face and move them around a lot, sit in the living room and go back another 30 minutes. And I hate to say it, the relatives in there say, well, they ain't breathing, they must be dead. And the funeral home folks say, you think he's dead? You know, they didn't have no scopes or nothing to put on him. You didn't have to call the coroner during those days, and they take him on to the funeral home. And I'd never known them to bring one back, never.
Whether he was dead or not, he got buried.
I don't like to say that, but that's the truth. I say I never known to bring one back.
If he didn't bring one back, then he got buried.
I hate to say it, but I have to admit it's about true.
Now, Doc, we're running to the end of our program. We got so much more to cover, but we're going to bring it back Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. But in Jackson, Mississippi, we stay in the headlines all of the time now. Whether we got a boil water notice, which we're currently under. We pay $2 million a month to a company to manage the water plant. And we still got a boil water notice right here in Jackson, Mississippi right today. We got all of our people fighting with one another. Black folk are in charge, but black economics are declining. How is that possible? How do you have black people in charge and black economics are on the decline?
What black people in charge of what?
Well, you got 4 members of the Jackson City Council that are black. You got 5 members of the Hines County Board of Supervisors that are black. You got 7 out of 10 members on JPS board that is black. All black folk on the airport authority, over $1 billion they control, and yet today I don't have one contract.
And you're not going to get one because you're not in control. Those black people are going to give the contracts to the people that's been getting the contracts since this state got incorporated in 1817 or sometime. I'm not for sure about the incorporation date for the state. That's who's going to get the contract. Now they might eventually, if you get some new people in office, they might give you a subcontract about 5 or 10% of whatever the major contract is, if you be a good
That's called sharecropping.
That's right, exactly
at
right.
another level. But now, Doc, I want to say to you that the people that I name, if they were in office, if Martin was in office, Malcolm, Stokely, Ralph Brown, Meggers, Tisdale, Percy Green, Charles Evans, Angela Davis, Sam Cooke, James Brown, Frederick Douglass, I say if they were in charge, black economy would be booming.
I say they would never have been in charge. None of them you named never were. And those people were not in a position to accept anything like that because they were either working for the enemy or they were plants. And they were always believing in turning the other cheek.
Doc, I'm not gonna sit here and allow you to say that some of the people that I named could have been working for the enemy.
I know they were, sir. When you were in the civil rights movement back in the 1960s, the late 50s, and the early 70s. In private meetings, you will hear people identifying certain preachers, certain black leaders that were alleged then to be Uncle Toms and informers. And many of them were proven to be that way through the Sovereignty Commission. I don't know whether you read some of those documents or not, but they had a lot of black people. Some was in the civil rights era. They were preachers, black business people, regular Joe Blows. Many of them were forced to inform, and some were paid to inform, and all of them are not dead today. They not only were they in Mississippi, they were in all the southern states. And that's why any time the black people had some plan and they wanted to do something, the sheriff and the mayors of those cities knew about it before the regular members did.
We're going to have to bring this program to a close. Our time has run out, but we're going to deal with black history during January and February. We're going to deal with and name names about those individuals that have done the most to move our people forward, because we want to salute them and we want to encourage them. If you never get any encouragement and you on the battlefield out there fighting for us and no one recognizes the efforts that you're putting in place to try to save us, you get tired and you get lonely and you get weary and you get depressed, and soon you're going to quit. And so we want to recognize what you're doing, and we want to salute you for it. Now, to those that are in position today that are holding us back, that are carrying out the business of our Europeans, that are making absolutely certain that they continue to get all of the largesse, they get all of the contracts for goods and services, and you continue to be happy with that. And we keep calling you the honorable this and that. We're not going to call you the honorable this and that anymore. We're going to give you a new name. And it won't be the old name of Uncle Tom. We're going to give you a name that will require you to think about you need to relocate to a city that doesn't have all of this diaspora that we have here in Jackson. Now, I hate that our time is running out, but we're going to pick up on this next week. Doc, any closing remarks?
Yes, I would just like to say we look at the numbers, around here. And we are very pleased to have a lot of viewers and listeners. Is increasing every time. And I have been getting a lot of invitations, and I want folks to know, if you want to hear the real news and you need a speaker to come to your church, your school, or your community organization to talk about this so-called Black History Month or Martin Luther King, you call us at 601-201-1957. And we'll come and talk to you not only about King and all those others, we'll give you solutions that you can start using in 30, 60, 90 days to change your status, your family, and your community. It's tired. It's very tiring to hear the same old speech every year talking about what these so-called black leaders did, and all of them are dead, and have no solutions. Then the next year, you're going to do the same thing, have a parade, feed them, and still have no solutions. And every year things get worse, economically, socially, and politically. It's time for that to end, Mr. Socrates.
I want to close this program in honor of my second mother, my oldest sister, Ethel, who's out in Los Angeles. No, she's in Sacramento, California. I want her to know how much I appreciate her and what she has meant to me and how she supported and helped me to get through those difficult times. She's going through some difficult times out there in California, and I want her to know, Ethel, that I love you dearly. Doc, you want to recognize anybody that meant a lot to you?
Yeah, I do. I want to recognize my old 99-year-old dad. I just want you to know he has not realized that I'm not 14 or 15. He has been telling me the same and giving me the same advice since I've been 13, 14, or 15. And I'm almost 100 myself, and he's still giving me the same advice. And believe it or not, it's some excellent advice. And when I think about it, I say to myself, and then I tell him, man, you're not a saint, but you give good advice, and if I follow it, I'm going to be all right. He said, I told you, boy. I told you. He said, I'm talking from experience.
Yeah, 99.
That's right.
Listen, I hope you've enjoyed our program. We appreciate your support wherever you're watching. We appreciate the large following that we have in London and in Nigeria and all across this great world. Until next week, have a good evening and stay safe.